with us. I can't see her on the participants list.
Oh, look, it says. She was there for the pre-meet.
She's not down now, I don't think.
No.
No, not yet. Yeah.
When the meeting starts, I'll make sure everybody speaks that's raised their hand. I can't promise it will be in the right order, though. But
It goes into the right order on the participants page. It should change the order.
Ah, should it?
Yeah. So basically, your order won't change, and Dan's order won't change. But beyond that, raise your hand. I think it changes the order. So that's quite sophisticated.
So as you raise your hand, it'll automatically go to the top.
Correct.
Ah, right.
I'm led to believe.
So if I'm raising my hand, then I just wait. I still wait for the chair to call my name. Is that correct? With the audio.
Yes, and then you unmute Elisa, and then I'll have your say. Ask your question.
Excellent. So if I'm raising my hand, then I just wait.
And Lisa, no, you don't wave. You go to participants and do raise hand on the bottom of the participants list. Have you got that up?
With the audio.
Yes, and then you unmute Elisa, and then I'll have your say. Ask your question.
Excellent. So if I'm raising my hand, then I There's some playback. That's weird.
Have you got the participants column up, Elisa?
I do, yes.
So raise hand is at the bottom left.
Yes, no, I've seen it. I have participated in meetings where the chair was actually asking people to do this.
Okay.
And it does get really bad really quickly.
Yeah, so click more, hopefully on rename.
Playback. That's weird.
Have you got the participants column up, Elisa?
I do, yes.
The raised hand is at the bottom left.
Yes, no, I've seen it.
Can't hear you, Steve, very well. Steve, can't you keep fading?
Okay.
And it does get really bad really quickly.
Can everyone hear me all right?
We can, but I don't know if I'm the only one who keeps hearing a replay of the last 5 seconds. And that is really bizarre.
Okay.
Yes, there is a replay.
Can't hear you, Steve, very well. Steve, can't you keep fading?
And it does get really bad really quickly.
Can everyone hear me all right?
We can, but
It's not very loud.
Keeps hearing a replay of the last 5 seconds. And that is really bizarre.
Yes, there is a replay.
Can't hear you, Steve, very well. Steve, can't you keep fading? The sound has gone.
Not very loud.
Keeps hearing a replay of the last 5 seconds. That is really bizarre.
I have just turned everyone's microphone to mute.
I couldn't hear that last couple at all.
I have just turned everyone's microphone to mute.
Daniel, it's Mark Goldsack here. Are you dealing with this repeating echoing sound that we're getting of a replay? And Steve, I think you were speaking, but we were all on mute, including yourself.
Yeah, Dan muted us, sorry. So I've now unmuted, hopefully. But you're right, there's this nasty echo in the background, isn't there?
Dan, if you perhaps mute yourself there.
You want me to mute myself, Nick?
No, Dan, I think he's muted himself now. I think that
Right.
Can I ask a question? Is anybody playing the YouTube on a different device? Because I think what we're hearing back is the YouTube sound.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, because that would be delayed, yeah. No, I've got nothing on.
Oh, Councillor Taylor's joined us.
So yes, can we all make sure there's no YouTube playing on a different device in the background, because that's not going to help.
Just advise Councillor Taylor that she's on mute because she's been trying to talk to us and we haven't been hearing her.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everybody. And I'm sorry I was late. I was trying to get into the pre-meeting and that wasn't working, but a helpful officer rang me, Mr. Beach just rang me up and sorted me out. Okay, I'll go
Thanks,
back.
Amanda. Yes, the
Sorry,
pre-meet only a quarter of an hour, so. So do we think we're ready, Dan, for 10 o'clock?
We still don't have Councillor Jan, have we?
I'll just give Mary a quick ring and get her to join as soon as possible.
So are you ready to start, Dan?
Yeah, we're just getting hold of Councillor French and she'll join us as soon as possible.
Okay. So can everyone mute, please, and then just unmute when it's your time to speak. Okay, welcome everybody to this meeting of the Communities and Partnerships Committee on the 22nd of April 2020. I'd like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting via the Council's website. Due to the government guidance on social distancing, this meeting is being held remotely in accordance and provisions set out in the local authorities and police and crime panels coronavirus flexibility of local authority and police and crime panel meetings England and Wales regulations 2020 and with Cambridgeshire County Council's own virtual meeting protocol. A decision summary and minutes of the meeting will be produced in the usual way, and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on the meeting page of the Council's website. To enable the meeting to run in an orderly manner, I would ask all members of the committee to keep their video cameras switched on for the duration of the meeting and to keep their microphone muted except when I invite them to speak. Officers will join us to introduce their reports in the usual way. Any members wishing to ask questions or make a comment should indicate this by clicking the raised hand function on the right-hand side of their screen. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, ask your question, and then mute it again to allow officers to respond. There will be no points of order or personal explanation. As with all new arrangements, especially those involving new systems, there is always a risk that we may run into technical problems, and I would ask for your patience if we do. Should this occur, I will declare an adjournment while the fault is addressed and the public broadcast will be paused. If it is not possible to address the fault, and the meeting may be abandoned until such time as it can be reconvened. Please also note that to facilitate discussion, I intend to waive the committee procedure rule limiting members' contributions to 5 minutes. I also propose to allow members to speak more than once on each item if appropriate. However, make sure that your contributions remain concise and to the point. I would remind members and officers that all virtual meetings will be recorded. Can I just start by thanking Simone Taylor for her contribution to the committee and welcome Councillor Henry Batchelor, who has now joined the committee. Welcome, Henry. Members, I'd like to begin by calling the names of all members of the committee to establish your presence. Please could you confirm your presence by clicking on releasing the mute and then answering your say you're present. Councillor Ashwood.
Present.
Councillor Batchelor.
Present.
Councillor Costello.
Present.
Councillor Every.
Present.
Councillor French. Hopefully joining us shortly then. Councillor Goldsack.
Present.
Councillor Machini.
Present.
Councillor Nieto.
Present.
Councillor Taylor. Councillor Taylor, are you with us?
Presence.
Well done. And myself, Councillor Criswell. So that's everyone, Nick, except Councillor French, who hopefully will join us shortly. We now move on to apologies for absence and declarations of interest. Do we have any apologies for absence, Nick?
Well, we have apologies from Councillor Richards, and Councillor Machini is standing in her.
Thank you. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? No raised hands, so I assume that's a no. Thank you very much. So we move on to agenda item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of March 2020. They have been sent round. There is an electronic link so that members have had a chance to see them. Can I ask if they're a true record, members? Any dissent? So if there is no dissent, then I will assume that we are happy that they're a true record, and I'll sign them at the first opportunity when we get back to Shire Hall. So the recommendation is to approve the minutes, and I'll declare that as carried. We move on to item 3, which is the action log. An updated action log was included in the published papers for this meeting. Adrienne, welcome. Would you like to present any further updates to the action log?
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. No substantive updates to report today. I would just like to acknowledge that there are more actions remaining outstanding than normal, and I just ask for your patience whilst we resolve those. Obviously, we're focusing a bit more at the moment on other matters, so we'll do our best to make sure those outstanding actions are updated prior to the next committee meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions, members, on the action log? Okay, none indicated, so we'll move on. And there's a change to the published agenda. The new agenda item 5 is the COVID-19 update report. Officers have been asked to bring a report on the COVID-19 response to date for those services for which each policy and service committee is responsible. A similar report will be brought to each future meeting until further notice. Given the rapidly changing situation and the need to provide the committee and public with the most up-to-date information possible, I have accepted this as a late report on the following grounds. 1, reasons for lateness was to allow the report to contain the most up-to-date information possible. And 2, reasons for urgency to enable the committee to be briefed on all current situations relating to the council's response to COVID-19 for those services for which it is responsible. And just before, Adrienne, I ask you to introduce the report, can I, on behalf of the committee, thank you and all our officers of this council for their hard work at this time, whether it be frontline staff working under difficult circumstances or officers redeployed to more urgent roles than they are used to. This is the Communities and Partnerships Committee. I also think it would be good to acknowledge the huge part volunteers are playing by stepping up to support isolated and vulnerable people within their communities. All our partners are also working so hard together in response to this crisis. Think Communities is happening before our eyes. This is not a drill, this is for real. So any positives from this awful episode, hopefully we'll see benefits in that we all work much better together afterwards. So I do hope you'll pass on the thanks and appreciation of this committee, Adrienne, and not just obviously to yourself, who've played a very leading role in this, but to all our staff. So thank you very much for that. And I'll let you introduce the report if you would. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, thank you for those very kind and generous words, and also for the introduction. And also thank you for allowing us to bring this report to you at short notice. As the Chairman said, we will get into a regular rhythm of updates as the weeks and months pass by. So this first report brings you up to date on the national response, Cambridgeshire's response as a system, and then the council's response. And then I'll talk briefly about the work that we've been leading through this committee's leadership to support some of our most vulnerable residents and to harness the capacity of our volunteers, building very much on the base of the work we've been doing over the last 18 months as part of the Think Communities programme. So I'll just quickly take you through the report. Section 2 describes the UK response. I'll just draw your attention to section 2.4, which describes the key features of the new Act of Parliament, which is, amongst other things, allowing for meetings such as this to be able to take place. The 5 features there have been interpreted and translated into local practice and are allowing us to be fleet of foot and very agile in our response, quite rightly so in the current climate. I would just point out, perhaps at this point, helpfully, that there are some features that sit alongside the Act to do with adult social care, and particularly what's known as the Care Easement Act, which allows local authorities to relax the rules around the Care Act and being compliant with the Care Act. I think it's helpful and important to stress early on that this council has made the decision not to apply those rules, and we are therefore still fulfilling all of the requirements of the Care Act. Whilst that doesn't fall within this committee's remit, I think members should be reassured that the people that need our care and attention continue to receive that, despite the additional pressures that we're facing as a local authority. So on to section 3, the Cambridgeshire system response. And by system, this committee in particular is familiar with that term. We're talking really about the whole group of partners that operate public services and our voluntary and faith sector communities working as one single system, very much a key feature of Think Communities. We've established through our local resilience forum an approach which mirrors the work of the pandemic flu plan that was put in place some years ago. So we've adopted that as the approach. It brings with it a command structure which enables proper rigour, very agile decision making, unblocking issues very, very quickly. And the oversight of that is led by a gold command group, which is chaired by the chief executive of the county council and Peterborough City Council and the chief operating officer of the clinical commissioning group. That group has an executive team and that meets daily for a daily update, and then a full group of gold command partners meets on a weekly basis. And then the work of that group is supported by a tactical coordination group known as the Silver Command Group, which has a number of subgroups which are listed for you for information at section 3.4 of the report. This committee will be, I think, particularly interested in the community reference subgroup, which is focusing on how we harness the amazing response from our voluntary and faith sector partners, as well as our citizens, but is also leading the work on identifying and supporting vulnerable people across our communities that might ordinarily be missed through a pandemic such as this. And I'll talk a little bit more about the work of the community reference group shortly. For our own organisation, it's worth just noting as well that our joint management team, so that's the director team of the County Council, also has set up a Gold Command structure, and it meets every single day at 8 o'clock to run through the previous day's activities to ensure that key decisions are being made and to unblock any blockages or escalate where necessary. So a very robust, I think, command structure in place, well supported across the system and jointly led, as I say, by the County Council and the Clinical Commissioning Group. So moving now on to section 4, I won't go through this in detail, but it's a helpful reminder of the changes to governance arrangements, which I know you're all familiar with, committee members, but helpful there for others to see headlines of the changes that we've made through the new legislation. And as I say, that's allowing for a meeting such as this to be able to take place today. So section 4 is there really for background information. And then section 5, we start to talk there about the specific practical response that this committee is responsible for. And one of the, I think, most effective responses that we've made is to establish a county-wide coordination and response hub based in the centre of the county, but having and developing oversight and support for the very most vulnerable people across our communities. These are known as people that need to shield from the virus, people that need or have been instructed effectively by either NHS England or their general practitioner to remain at home with no face-to-face contact for at least 12 weeks. People with very serious health conditions who, if they became susceptible to the virus, became poorly with the virus, would actually be, have the consequences will be very serious. So it feels for me and for the team here, and I think for all of us, a huge responsibility and a real privilege actually to have some part in playing here to support that group of people. At the moment, there are about 13,000 people across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough that fall into this category, but we anticipate that number increasing to somewhere between 20 and 30,000 as people register in response to communication they've had from NHS England or their local GP. And our role is to wrap support around all 13,000 of those people where it's needed or necessary. I would say about 2/3 of the people that are registering now are saying that they've got a strong support network in place and aren't requiring significant amounts of support from the hub. But they still remain for me a huge priority because whilst they might have that support network in place today, tomorrow, next week, next month, it may be very different. And so we're continuing to contact those that do say they've got support very, very frequently. Probably quite annoyingly actually for some of them, but to make sure that they remember how to reach us should that support break down. For the third of people that say they don't have support in place, that they are our biggest priority. They receive contact from us within about 24 hours of us being notified that they need to shield by way of email, letter and phone call. We are then making contact on a minimum weekly basis with all of those people to make sure that their circumstances haven't changed. And the biggest demand really that has emanated from those conversations at this stage is access to food and to medicines. And we've worked really well across the system with our health partners and with our suppliers to establish a logistical operation out of the county-wide hub, which can distribute food within a matter of hours and to ensure that medicine pathways for people that need prescriptions is robust and strong. Don't forget, these are the people that probably require the most medical attention. So it's important those pathways remain in place. And I should just acknowledge, building on the chairman's comments, the fantastic team I'm blessed with here at the Hub, and the extended team of staff that are now making those calls, very ably led by Elaine Matthews and trained by Elaine Matthews, about 120 call handlers making outbound calls every week to vulnerable people, and 40 or more others on a rota basis handling incoming calls. We're operating this as in a no wrong front door principle, so it doesn't matter whether or not we should be the organisation to help. We want to help and will help, and if we're not, we'll make sure that the person gets to the right place. The other important acknowledgement I'd like to make is the amazing response from our district and city council partners, who have each created their own local hubs, very much supplementing the work of the Countywide Hub. So whilst the Countywide Hub is focusing its effort on the shielded group of residents, those that are the most vulnerable to harm, our network of district and city hub partners are supporting everybody else, which is no mean feat. And the incredible effort that's happening down at street level is really wonderful to see, and very much built on the principles of Think Communities, and it's very much something we would want to continue beyond the current crisis. So real effort from our district and city council partners. There are a couple of other roles, important roles that the Countywide Hub holds. The first is the deployment of volunteers and the redeployment of county council officers into other frontline work. We've had about 2,200 volunteers come forward across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to join the effort, which is just phenomenal, an incredible response. And that, in the context of 750,000 nationally joining the NHS volunteer scheme, just shows, I think, the will and passion of our citizens to step up at a time of crisis. About 800 or so of those volunteers have been deployed, and others are going through training, and we're sharing information regularly. And as demand continues to play out over the coming weeks and months, I'm sure that those volunteers will be very busy. And we are also holding responsibility for redeploying county council staff, those staff that aren't in critical frontline roles, but that could quickly, through a bit of training, or could very easily move into other frontline roles where capacity is short through perhaps illness, or where demand is increasing. And so we've seen a lot of staff being incredibly flexible, staff that would normally do something very different to what we're now asking them to do, just stepping up and moving into new roles without complaint, not worrying about any of the issues. We protect those staff. There's a risk assessment process in place to make sure that they're well supported, and we maintain regular contact. But it's an incredible effort and response from across the organisation. And then I did mention the other role earlier in the report relating to the Community Reference Group, which is a subgroup of the command structure. And the Community Reference Group brings together about 35 partners each week for a 90-minute discussion about how collectively the system is operating, particularly from a voluntary, community and faith sector perspective, but also how the county council is working with our district and city council partners. And so 35 regular attendees, and a real focus on supporting vulnerable people, identifying, supporting vulnerable people. So important work. And again, I think we've created something there that I think will have life well beyond the current crisis, as a way of really binding partners together and finding really creative solutions. It is incredible, actually, just how much we're able to be flexible and creative in a time of crisis. And we're making decisions very quickly. We're sharing data much more readily, with the appropriate checks and balances in place. But for me, certainly, and I know for the chairman, we've discussed this, this is something we do not want to lose just because we happen to be in crisis. The behaviours we're seeing very much need to be sustained well into the future. Just very briefly then to finish, section 6 describes the work we're doing around risk management on behalf of the whole organisation, and we're bringing forward to committee in due course an updated risk register to ensure the committee is satisfied that our risks are being managed. And I mentioned the daily JMT, Joint Management Team meeting, that reviews the risk log on a weekly basis, and we'll be doing so again on Monday morning. We'll bring to you the next committee meeting an update on the risk register. And then very finally from me, just a comment about the 7th section on recovery. The recovery is an interesting term. It's the process by which we need to consider how we move forward beyond the current crisis. But it's a term that's used nationally and almost set by the Local Resilience Forum process. But it implies, certainly for me, a deficit position. It implies that we're going to recover back to the situation that we were in before. And for some services, I think that's absolutely right. But I think for us, this committee, the work we've been doing around Think Communities and other services, a word such as transition or evolution might be a more appropriate term to use, because actually we want a new future, a new normal to come out of this situation, certainly from my point of view and my colleagues and officer points of view. This is about trying to build on all of the work we've been doing. As the chairman said, we're doing this in live time, but there is no reason why we shouldn't take the very best parts of how we're now operating together as a system, making decisions swiftly, supporting the most vulnerable in really creative ways forwards as a new normal. And that's really my aspiration, and I hope an aspiration shared by the committee. So thank you, Chairman. That concludes my presentation, and very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Adrienne. Mark, you're first.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Adrienne. I guess I'm going to lead a long list here, but I've just got 3 very quick points. I'm just going to say thanks, and that is one huge thanks that goes very far and deep. I know we've already done that. When I was speaking to my local highways officer, and he was telling me that he's currently redeployed to a hotel in Peterborough where he's helping to look after the homeless people, it just blew me away. And that really focused my mind as to how far our staff are going. So that, you know, it's a big thanks, and I thank you for that. A pertinent question, Adrienne, I know you know this, in terms of I'm actually coordinating the local village group here where I live. So calls are coming in. Can somebody go shopping for me? Can somebody get a prescription? I've got rooks nesting on my chimney. Can somebody help me because I'm worried about it? Seriously, we're getting some wonderful questions. But one of the situations that keeps arising is occasionally we've got vulnerable people that are known to social services, known to adult services, but they're kind of falling between the cracks. So we at a local level are making decisions, you know, whether we can or can't support. I'll give you a live example, and I think it will just highlight the kind of decision we're having to make. We've got a mental health suffering gentleman in the village. Everybody knows him. He's a perfectly charming guy, but he really does suffer. And he chain smokes. He really is a heavy smoker. And he can't get out to get his cigarettes. Now, he had a spell in Fulbourn Mental Institution last year. And, you know, we've actually taken a decision locally, which goes against my better judgment, but it is actually right to buy this gentleman some cigarettes daily and deliver them to him, because we feel that under the current circumstances, that's a better decision than to potentially suffer from some mental health breakdown of the chap going cold turkey during these circumstances. Now, I know that's an extreme example, but I think he typifies an awful lot of people that are needing this kind of help. So my question really, Adrienne, is, listen, I know it can't be carte blanche, but are we safe in telling our volunteers that do what's right, do what you think is right, and you have the full support and backing of us, and then we'll deal with any consequences afterwards? We cannot go down the line of everybody being DBS checked. We cannot go down the line of every single 100% GDPR compliant conversation or situation. So I just think under these circumstances, I'd like to know the county's position for effectively protecting those that are volunteering locally.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. That's a really great example, and must have tested, I think, the resolve of you and the volunteers, because nobody wants to condone, you know, one aspect of somebody's behaviour over another, but actually fundamentally this is about protecting lives and saving lives. And I think that very much the rules that we're operating under is that that's the primary focus, and everything else becomes secondary. And we are here, and we want to be here to support volunteers, to support councillors, to support other organisations to share that risk. So, and you know, we will at any point we will happily step in and provide advice and guidance, but providing that people are acting in a completely pragmatic way, with their focus being first and foremost on protecting life. That might be about might involve making decisions or putting in place processes which feel uncomfortable, but as long as that's the primary focus, then there won't be any issues, certainly from the County Council's point of view. And I think that's a view shared across the whole of the system. And the point around people slipping through the cracks is an important point. We receive a daily download of data from government about those people that are shielded or need to be shielded, and that enables us to make contact. And I just want to say a couple of things about the data, if I may, Chairman. The first is that we will start to share with all councillors the details of people who are shielding in your divisions. And that's important because I think you need to be reassured that the people that are in your communities that are the most vulnerable are getting the care and attention that they need. It will come in the form of a checklist, and it will allow you to hold us to account and to make sure that if you've got local knowledge about others you think should be on that list, you can spot it quickly and identify it. So that's the first thing we'll start. The second point is that we are now used through the Act of Parliament able to share data with and across the system much more openly. And we've invoked a process called the Vulnerable People Protocol, which is something we put in place a few years ago for occasions such as this. What it basically allows is for the traditional rules around data sharing still to apply, but data sharing to be made much more straightforward because the primary focus is on saving lives. And so we are pulling together data which will identify people that don't tick the shielded list criteria, which is quite stringent, but that does perhaps capture the people such as the resident you described. They may not even be known to services. They may or may not be. And I'm particularly concerned, I think, about those that aren't, because we can check with our own databases here at the County Council who is known to services. But what about those families perhaps who have lost their jobs, who were just about coping before and now are not coping, but aren't known to services? The work we're doing on the data will help identify those, and we can then reach out to them and provide whatever support is required. So I hope that's reassuring. Pragmatism, common sense, reach out is my advice to us where necessary, and you'll get all the help and support, and the volunteers will get all the help and support that we can possibly provide.
Thank you, Adrienne. Barbara, you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, Adrienne, thank you for your report. Interesting, and it's good to hear what County's doing. I appreciate your comment about the City Council and the district, because they have been magnificent. They are taking one heck of a load. County's dealing with 13,000 on the shielded list. City and the districts are dealing with many, many times that number of people who are equally vulnerable because the criteria to get on the list are so tight.
Right.
You know, I'd like to pay tribute to fellow councillors actually, because we're at ground zero. We're seeing it on the ground day in, day out. Well, I am through my windows because I live in the house. Trumpington, we've got one of the city council hubs. All the county and city councillors are on it. We're setting up our own food bank. We've organised shopping. We do prescription collection. We do dog walking. We have a list of people who need a phone call. We've organised all that. There is a heck of a lot of work going on. And the information I'm getting back from the City Council is all good, practical, solid stuff and really helpful. I just wish I could say the same about some of the bulletins coming out from County. They are extremely wordy. I go through them every day because if there's anything of use, I want to be able to feed that onto the City Councillors in the patch. I'm hardly ever finding anything that they probably haven't already found out from other sources. is there any way we could cut some of the verbiage and do a bit more bullet pointing, but just, you know, highlighting practical things and what's going on, because an awful lot of it is just being repeated day after day. And we're getting so many emails, trying to keep on top of them is a nightmare. But thank you for what you're doing. I know how hard you're working on it.
Thank you, Councillor Ashwood. That's very kind of you, and I absolutely echo your points around the city and district response. Just phenomenal achievements. And I'll happily take the comments around the communications back to our head of communications. I have picked up in the last day or two some similar observations actually, and we'll have a conversation with her to see how that might be improved or enhanced. One of the things we'd like to do in the county hub is share, probably on a Friday of every week, just a summary, almost digital newsletter that just describes in practical terms some of the work that we're doing and some case studies, because there is a lot of theoretical information out there, but actually we'd like to bring some of the work that's happening across the hub network to life. So I'm afraid that will be another email probably in your inbox, but hopefully one that's interesting and relevant and timely. But I'll certainly take the comments back to Christine Birchall and we'll have a conversation.
Chair, may I just come back on that?
Yes, okay, Barbara.
Thank you. It would be extremely useful if we could have some idea on a weekly basis of the numbers of people helped, the numbers of referrals, how many food parcels have gone out. It's that sort of practical information that we need to be able to feed back to people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very much will feature in our weekly newsletter. So that's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Adela?
Yeah, hi, sorry, it took me a bit of time to unmute there. I noticed in your list of partners for the community reference group, I noticed that although we've got Cambridgeshire Acre there, there's no representation from DEFRA or the NFU. Given that we are basically a rural community with a lot of farmers out there who might be starting to have difficulties, has been highlighted with bringing in workers from other countries, would it not be useful for you to have an idea what is going on in our farming community?
Thanks, Councillor Costello. I love that idea. I absolutely think that's a gap and really helpful suggestion. So thank you very much. We'll probably approach the NFU, I guess, in the first instance. What I will say is that Councillor Criswell and I had a really useful and very positive meeting yesterday morning with reps from Cams Acre and also from CAPALC, the Association of Local Councils, because we were anxious, probably more than concerned, to make sure that our rural communities that inevitably will be affected in different ways, socially and economically, are getting the attention required, and that we can tailor the response from the hubs to suit local needs. And indeed, the recovery or transition or evolution for those communities will look and feel very different. So we have agreed to do some work with Acre and CAPALC anyway, particularly on the rural community element. And CAPALC are going to join the community reference group, so we've got some coverage there. But I really do like the idea of the NFU or DEFRA joining that group, and we'll very much action that, and I'll report back as part of the action plan at next committee. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adela. Henry?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And yeah, thank you, Adrienne, to you and all the officers for all the work you're doing. It's sterling work. My question was more of a practical one. It's on section 5 of the report, the Cambridgeshire Against Scams Partnership. Just a practical question, because I have had some reports of scams or what people think are scams. If those are reported, is the advice simply to go to the website that's mentioned in the report and get in contact with someone that way, or is there a different method that these should be reported?
Great, thanks, Councillor Batchelor. Yes, we are anxious about scams. We haven't at point of writing seen huge numbers, but we have had local reports, and sadly, certainly nationally, there is a reported increase. So what's included here are some examples of reporting. This is a criminal act ultimately, and if somebody is the victim of a scam, it needs to be reported through the normal police channels as a criminal act. And intelligence we gather is helpful in terms of education. But Elaine Matthews is on the online, I'm getting my terminology right. And I wonder, Elaine, if you could perhaps come in and comment on Councillor Batchelor's specific question, and also the work that we're doing through the Scams Partnership.
Yes, certainly. So as Adrienne says, the normal reporting routes apply, so action fraud and also to police officers. We haven't seen a massive increase of scams across our county. Most of them are telephone scams that we've seen. What we've seen success with is that actually before COVID, we already had a really successful Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Scams Partnership in place, and that's been running for well over a year now. We've got well over 70 organisations who are shown as supporters of that work, and so we've been regularly putting out scam prevention messages, and that's worked in our favour. So what we have been able to do is immediately mobilise those very active supporters and continue to use those routes out into our communities. A huge number of those supporters are parish councillors and parish council clerks, and they've been magnificent at taking those messages, but also coming back to us with concerns. The difficulty we've seen across many of our communities, there's some really well-meaning people who are out there trying to help their neighbours, and so there is some door knocking going on, certainly in the earlier weeks, and people putting notes through the door saying, "I'm here to help you." We've been able to help manage that through our parish councils, but also with our local coordinators and neighbourhood watch people who are already established in those areas as well. So we've been able to be quite successful at the prevention messages. I think it's also worth us saying that we have done such a great job of being making people scams aware in our community, that when the team that I have now who are phoning those on the shielded list, are getting many people saying, "How do I know it's really you?" And that's a fantastic response to hear from a resident, because they are questioning who's calling them and what the purpose of that is. So we've taken quite strict and sensible measures to help with that, and something that I know other local authorities are now replicating, because we've been quite successful at that. So we're doing as much as we can, but it is a concern, it is a worry, I will say. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So I think the message is, if someone is contacted by a body or somebody and they perceive it to be a scam, the response is to report it to the police rather than this body mentioned in the report.
Well, I think if they perceive it to be a scam, the first bit of advice is try and establish how accurate it is. So some of them are really quite obvious. Some of the ones that we've seen are things like, so for example, somebody reported a supermarket got in touch with them to say, "You've now got a priority slot, you need to pay me £25 to secure it." Well, first of all, they don't shop with that local supermarket, they don't shop with them anyway, so how would they have a delivery slot? And our messages have been very consistent with people that where food packages are being delivered either by government or through our coordination hub, we will not be asking you for payment, and we will not be asking you for bank details. And we've also been saying for the supermarket delivery slots, you will not be asked to pay to secure that slot. So we've been quite strict and quite succinct really with our messaging out, and that's certainly helped. So they don't have to report ones like that to the police, because we don't want to overload the police with that sort of report. It would normally go to action fraud anyway, but it's useful for us to know locally where those sort of things are hitting us, so that we can continue to put out our local messages through our Against Scams Partnership supporters and through you guys as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Happy with that, Henry?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Jan.
Thank you. Sorry for my lateness, but I did have technical problems. Yeah, I think all county council are doing an absolutely fantastic job throughout the whole the whole issue of this. Hopefully soon we will all get back. And at Fenland, it's absolutely amazing the amount of volunteers we found up here, right across into all the towns, etc., etc. One of the things that I have been asked repeatedly is about the recycle centres. Everybody's in lockdown. They're doing all their do-it-your-why, etc. But there is so much rubbish waiting in people's gardens, and we're really concerned about the fly tipping. I did notice that Norfolk County Council were reconsidering of opening their sites. Have you any updates on that, Mr. Chairman or Adrienne?
If I might, Chair, just come in here. So this falls within the responsibility of our Place and Economy Directorate, and is a regular subject of discussion at our morning Joint Management Team Gold Command meeting. So I know that the Corporate Director, Steve Cox, is keeping this under very close review. So that's for reassurance. The decision hasn't yet changed. However, if helpful, I can ask Steve to provide a short written update to committee members after the meeting has happened today.
Thank you, Adrienne.
Just one comment from me, Jan. I know this is something that the leader has discussed with chairs, and there's a firm view at the moment that government guidance needs to change in order for those recycling sites to open, because at the moment it's not one of the designated reasons why you should leave your home. So unless government changes that guidance, it doesn't really allow us to open.
Yeah, thanks for
and
that.
I think the other concern is, of course, that we would want everybody, all our neighbouring councils, to open at the same time, because if they open at different times, obviously that's going to attract a lot of longer travel and cross-border transport. So it needs to be a coordinated response from government, and then everybody open across the country at the same time.
Okay, thanks for that, Chairman.
Thank you. Lena?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Adrienne. And I just wanted to touch again on the local coordinators. So you have 2,000 volunteers. Are they the same people that are coordinating locally, or completely different? First, and then I want to know if do we have all the emails, and how are we reaching all those village coordinators in order to update them, and if they have any questions, to be able to reach us directly without somebody in the middle.
Okay, so on the first point of the volunteers, we know that a huge proportion of the volunteers on our books are also the people that are getting on with it already in their communities, as well as people that have signed up to the National NHS Volunteer Scheme. So a lot of people have put themselves forward in a number of different ways, which is just brilliant. There is clearly enough supply, if you like, of voluntary time and action and will to meet demand. So when we need to deploy any volunteers, we are carefully checking that we're not disadvantaging any work that they're already engaged in, or disadvantaging an organisation that they may be supporting. We do have an opportunity, I think, to reach out to some of our voluntary sector organisations, so that the likes of an Age UK, for example, or Caring Together, to offer them with some voluntary capacity at this time as well, because they're seeing an increase in demand. So it is really a whole system approach, and we know that people are wearing 3 or 4 hats. And there are also a number of county councillors and district councillors that have signed up to be allocated tasks through voluntary action as well. And sometimes that's a one-off. It might just be collecting a prescription, And sometimes we're seeing relationships really develop. So befriending, for example, just reaching out to somebody occasionally if they need a shoulder to cry on. So a real mixed bag, and that's fantastic to see. The issue of mutual aid and the amazing community response that's emerging has, I guess, has really snowballed, and it's been difficult to keep pace with the groups that have emerged through this crisis. So we're very busy working on populating the county database of voluntary organisations specifically set up for COVID-19 related response work. I think we'll never get there really, because they're cropping up so frequently. So we are making good use of our relationship with the district councils and with parish and town councils to make sure that we find out what's happening. We can collate that information into a single database and collect as much contact detail as possible so that we can reach out direct. But I have to say, much of the contact at the moment has been via our district and city council partners, who've probably got a better handle on the work that's happening on the ground. The other thing we did early on was to put in place our own coordinator for each district or city council area. Their role is to act as the link person between local action on the ground, the district or city council, and then the county council, to try and gather information, harvest information about the amazing work that's happening, and to make sure that those groups are getting the support that they need in practical terms in real time, rather than having to go through a lengthy process of decision making. So I think we're doing what we can. The work I mentioned earlier with Capalc and Camsacre will be important here, because they are about to issue, with our agreement, a short survey to all parish and town councils to do a similar exercise to gather the effort and energy that's happening on the ground. That will help further populate our database of contact information. And then it's important we sustain that beyond this crisis, obviously, to maintain all of this fantastic work. And therefore the effort and energy we're doing at the moment, putting into this to gather that information, has a life beyond coronavirus. So we're trying our hardest. I'm sure we'll miss people, but that's where we are currently.
Thank you, Adrienne. Sorry, Jack, can I just come back to that?
Yes, of course, Lena.
Yeah, thank you. I was just thinking maybe a discussion that that you can have is basically all the councillors, they are aware of who their village coordinator is. So if you were to ask, I think everybody could just send you all the contact details of all the village coordinators. I mean, I have them. And then because each coordinator from each village, then they have a massive spreadsheet of all the people helping within that village. You know, because there's kind of a road street coordinator in almost, at least in all my villages. So I'm just thinking maybe it would be good to utilize that, and I can certainly share with you that information, because I think it would be really reassuring for the coordinators to have somebody to talk to in case they have questions about GDPR,
absolutely,
or whatever. And then also it's kind of engaging with them, is what we want. So it's kind of just reaching. I mean, you have been doing an amazing job. This is just something, to continue working on, and just a suggestion for you to discuss maybe with the district how to best go about it. But
perfect.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity there.
Thank you so much. We'll definitely take that forward. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea, Lena, so that the information goes both ways, doesn't it? Amanda.
Thank you. Got two points to make. One about the free school meals entitlements, and another one to follow up on Councillor Batchelor's point about scams. It was good to see the letters from Jonathan Lewis going out to parents and schools about the free school meals. Everybody's circumstance, well, a lot of people's circumstances have changed immeasurably recently, and it's just great that we're pointing out that there's that entitlement there, and also gives us a way of helping children during the school vacations, or children who are actually not attending school. But I'd be interested to know what extra take up we've had, But I also wanted to raise the point about the vouchers that have been given out. And some of my people have been saying that it's not possible to use these vouchers at the supermarkets when they're doing the online shopping, given that many people are shielding and needing to shop online. I wonder if that's something that the county council could remedy in its contacts with the voucher operators. Secondly, going back to the comments about the scams, I do appreciate the work that the council is doing on that. It's appalling that people should seek to exploit what's already a very difficult situation. But I did have one point made to me, that one of the messages on the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Scams Partnership had been saying that the national NHS shielding help number 03333 050466 was a scam, and many people were saying that that is in fact the correct number. So I wonder if that information could be checked. I understand a few other councils have said that that number's wrong and had to issue a correction. If I was really clever, I could share my screen with you with that particular notice. I can't do that, but Elaine, if I could follow that up with you later, it would be useful. So we could have
Thank you, that would be really helpful. I am aware of that. I think it happened at the weekend. So it came out on, I think I'm right in saying it came out on Saturday. And one of our, Against Scams Partnership lead officers shared that with us on behalf of all of the Against Scams Partnership. So I think it came out from one of our partners, but we have double checked that and we'll be putting out some really clear information. The difficulty we've had is there's been an awful lot of people who have officially been tasked with contacting people on the shielded list, and that's proved to be enormously confusing for the people who are receiving the calls, but also for the rest of us who are working on that. And we're working with those bodies to make sure that it's done in an appropriate, managed way. And that they try and follow our lead, which is to make sure that people are given a passcode so they can verify that the person that's speaking to them is genuine, and follow that sort of route. But it'd be great to speak to you again, Councillor Taylor, about this.
Lovely, thank you very much. I'll be at home after the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Chairman, on the first point, if I may, I'll, and probably unhelpfully for today, but I'll make sure that Jonathan Lewis, the Director of Education, provides again a briefing note, and members on this committee that sit on the Children and People's Committee may know more, but certainly I know there was a lot of work that had to be done to set the scheme up. But I think more recent reports have been more positive, and I noticed that they've added now to the list of supermarkets either an Aldi or a Lidl opportunity as well, which just gives a greater flexibility. And certainly, if there is an issue around access to either online or physical shopping, we can definitely use our good works and good relationships locally to try and resolve that. So, if I may, I'll arrange for again a briefing note to be shared to committee after the meeting.
Yeah, thank you. It was Sainsbury's and Tesco's that were being commented on as the supermarkets didn't accept it, and in the Queen Edith area, we're quite a long way from Lidl and Aldi. We don't enjoy those supermarkets, so it's Sainsbury's and Tesco's that people shop at.
Thank you. Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Amanda. And Adrienne, just a point from me to pick up on Elaine's point about once the shielded list is out there, actually they're being contacted by quite a few people, and that's not always helpful. It's always done with the best intentions, but not always helpful. So I think we just need to make the point that you said the shielded list will be shared with local members. That will help inform us of the status, but it doesn't mean that we're being asked to go around and contact them all again and duplicate what's already happening. So I think, there needs to be a protocol that goes with that list just to say what's appropriate and what isn't.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. That would be incredibly helpful, just to keep some consistency and to protect these people. Thank you.
Liz, you're next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Of course, I want to add my thanks for our area, for everything that you've all been doing, but I want to just talk a bit about our youngsters who are in or not in schools. The first thing I wanted to do was to ask whether this committee could go back to the Education Committee and say how grateful we are for everything that they're doing in order to support our young people, even to the tune that our D&T departments are all making face masks and providing them for our care homes and so on. And that's something which you would only find on social media, but that's going on in our schools at the moment. I also wanted to talk about the coordinators and the people who are in and out of schools, because we are concerned, of course, that many of our vulnerable children who we would like to have in schools are actually not there. And it's about the eyes and ears of looking out to see what's happening and referring. You can't make a child obviously go to school, but nevertheless, the referrals. All our schools know who those youngsters are and are working very, very actively with them to try to do that. But if we could just alert, and I'm sure they've thought about this, to all the people that are out there that actually we're looking after the very vulnerable, and we're also looking after the mental health and care for our youngsters as well. And if they see something that they would like to refer on, I think that would be useful. And also, can I just have a plea for those youngsters who are leaving care? They are in completely different circumstances. There is a huge amount going on. I just wanted to say this. Including food parcels and all sorts of things. But again, it's another area of youngsters who are very much on their own with their social workers and so on. But life has ceased for them in lots of different ways, and they don't have families to fall back on. So if I could just ask everybody who's out there, thank you for everything you're doing. Sorry to say something even more, but those two areas, you know, our younger generation are struggling as much as others.
Thank you, Liz, and hopefully Adrienne will relay those messages to Children's Committee and Jonathan in particular. Thank
I
you.
absolutely will, Chairman. Thank you very much.
I have no other questions, members. So thank you very much, Adrienne, for that report. The recommendation is to note and comment on the progress made to date in responding to the impact of the coronavirus. Is everyone happy that we've done so? No dissent, so hopefully we'll take that as read then. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Adrienne, and you've heard the members' appreciation of everything that's going on, so thank you very much again. Okay, so item 6, Innovate and Cultivate Fund endorsement of recommendations. Elaine, welcome back again.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Yes, this is a very familiar paper that comes before the Community and Partnership Committee. So I'm sure all of you will have seen this approach previously. This is where we bring you the outcome of the discussion at the recommendation panel for the Innovate and Cultivate Fund, so that this committee can consider the proposals and recommendations and endorse those. So first of all, I'd just like to start actually by saying my huge thanks to Leanne Parrott, who many of you will know is the Innovate and Cultivate Lead Officer, and who's done a truly magnificent job in making sure that the recommendation panel continue to approach this round with the same robust attention to detail and due care and diligence. So thank you, Leanne. I believe she's watching this committee remotely, so thanks to her. So in April, all members of the Innovate and Cultivate recommendation panel considered the 10 project proposals for the Cultivate funding stream and 5 stage 1 project proposals to the Innovate funding stream. So just a quick reminder that the applications to the Cultivate Fund have a single stage application process, and it's the outcome of those applications that come to you before committee today. So the outcome of the panel is that 2 of those Cultivate applications have been recommended for funding, and they're shown in your committee paper. They are namely from Cambridgeshire Early Years Teaching Alliance and Disability Huntingdonshire. So to very briefly explain the application from Cambridge Early Years Teaching Alliance, they've submitted an application to deliver STEPS training in St Ives. STEPS is an evidence-based behavioural management approach that complements work that's already running in primary schools and focuses on helping children manage their emotions, their feelings, controlling their anger, and further developing key skills such as empathy and communication and problem solving. The Early Years Teaching Alliance are already Innovate and Cultivate grant holders. So they're already successfully delivering a STEPS behavioural management training programme to preschool staff in St Neots, and that's showing us very positive results indeed. So this application, this second application, will expand their training into a new geographical area. and they'll be expanding their training to nursery staff in St Ives. These positive experiences for the children really help to keep them engaged in education, and we're expecting that this initiative is expected to reduce the need for costly SEND interventions in primary care settings and thereby offer us a really good return on investment. This application was very strongly supported by the service lead who's involved in advising the recommendation panel, and therefore the panel would like to recommend fully funding their request for £9,925. The second application is from Disability Huntingdonshire. So Disability Huntingdonshire requested £18,345 towards an increase in caseworker hours to support more adults with disabilities. And it also included money for an upgrade to its current IT platform and database system so that they can move onto a more manageable and solid cloud-based system. That would help them with agile working, mobile working, and increase their staff's efficiency. Our service lead officers from Adult Social Care and our finance team representatives who reviewed the grant application were unable to find evidence for a saving for the County Council for full project proposal. We spent a great deal of time discussing this with Disability Huntingdonshire and going over their application to see what we could do to help achieve their ambitions. It was felt, though, that a smaller grant to cover the cost of the IT upgrade would certainly help Disability Huntingdonshire to streamline its working practices and increase its capacity to support client needs in the longer term, and therefore offer a return on investment for that portion of the project. So the panel therefore agreed to recommend grant funding of £6,000 to cover the capital costs of an IT upgrade and a contribution of the associated management costs for this work. We've discussed this with Disability Huntingdonshire, who said that they would be minded to accept that should the committee approve that application in that way. For the remaining applications, the scores were very clear-cut, and actually all of the unsuccessful applications scored lowest on the two criteria relating to return on investment. One other project, Arts Development in East Cambridgeshire, which was an arts-based mental health project for older people and illustrated the difficulty of showing a return on investment for even the best arts projects addressing mental health. And this is one project that the steering group will be considering further at our next meeting to see if there's a way that we can help support those groups further. Maybe not through the Innovate and Cultivate Fund, but in discussion with Cambridgeshire Community Foundation, who administer the Innovate and Cultivate Fund for us, looking at where other support can be found. The amount of funding that we've committed to date through this committee and through the Innovate and Cultivate Fund is £1,228,861 for 54 projects all told. If these two Cultivate applications recommended to the committee within this report are approved, then the total committed will be £1,244,786.75 for 56 projects.
Thank you, Elaine.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, were you carrying on?
No, that's fine. I think that's it, really.
Okay, thanks, Elaine. Lena, you had a question for Elaine?
Yes, hi Elaine, nice to see you. Thank you for all the work that you have been doing, and also Leanne on this. I think it's quite hard, to keep going business as usual in this strange time. So this is great that we have been able to continue pushing this forward. It's really important for the communities to see this coming forward. I just wanted to, so not regarding this particular, the two applications, but just in general, the end of year is kind of coming to an end. And I was wondering if we're thinking on doing kind of an annual review, something that we can potentially share with our communities and residents, also kind of as part of accountability and transparency of how we're using public, taxpayers' money. In the sense of, sharing this project and what has been happening in the last year. Thank you.
Yeah, So we do an annual review of the fund. The fund doesn't fall within our natural financial years across the council because we started, I believe, in I want to say November time a few years ago. So I recently brought an end of year evaluation to this committee, and I want to say it was in January, but I'm afraid I'd have to really look that up. So that what we do is review the fund on its annual basis, and we review it very carefully with the Cambridgeshire Community Foundation and make sure that we're on track for that. What we are doing at the moment is making sure that the funding that we have left available to us is going to be used in the best possible way, so the remaining allocation throughout the next few months. And I do think it's fair to say that the situation we're in now has really helped us to understand where communities are absolutely vital in helping us to manage all of the needs of our residents in a really useful way. So we will be certainly taking the learning from this that we're in the midst of now to see how we can better support our community groups in the future to do great things. I think it's also worth pointing out that we've been working with Cambridgeshire Community Foundation, who have very, very quickly set up a COVID coronavirus fund for community groups. They've been absolutely brilliant at that. We've supported them throughout the whole process, and I believe that some councillors from this committee are continuing to support them with that fund. And it's a way of making sure that actually we are recognising where support is desperately needed. For our Innovate and Cultivate fund, we continue to have the same criteria that we've always had for this fund, which is it has to show as a return on investments for our service areas. But that's not to say that we don't support those groups with funding from elsewhere. And certainly there's a couple of applications to this round where we've been able to direct them to other available funding which better meets their needs and is far less restrictive than the one that we've got at the moment here.
Thank you, Elaine. Sorry, can I just, would it be possible to find that annual report? And then I was just wondering if that's, yeah, I'll take a look at it just to see how customer or resident friendly it is and how, you know, if it's kind of 20, 30 pages, people are not going to read it. So it's how we make it accessible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll take a look if you.
Sure, I'll find the link and send it to you, Councillor.
Thanks, Elaine. And I think it's worth mentioning the deadline for the next round of applications is the 1st of August, I think, isn't it, Elaine?
That's correct, yes. Absolutely, and that will again be an Innovate and Cultivate round, and we hope, where possible, to do a, well, if we're able to do another drop-in session, a pre-application drop-in session. But I know Leanne is working really hard at the moment. We count this as a critical service, so Leanne is remaining on this role whilst also doing some of the redeployed work, helping us within the coordination hub. But she's already supporting other groups that are coming forward with ideas for funding.
Thanks, Elaine. So thanks, Leanne, from all of us, if you are indeed watching. So, Elisa.
Yes, thank you. It's funny that this should tie in perfectly with what Elaine just said right now. So first of all, thank you very much to everyone. And thank you, Adrienne, on the previous item as well. I didn't quite say much because everybody else was saying it, but it's been brilliant to work with you from, you know, the Labour group on the City Council as well. They all appreciate what you're doing, and thank you so much to Leanne for all the effort that she's put in, you know, making sure that we got all that we needed to score these applications this time round. And it was great that it could go ahead, and it seems to have gone ahead really well, and it's fantastic. I had a question about this specific thing that Elaine just mentioned about future applications and how we're adapting this process, you know, in the times of crisis, because I mean, I know Leanne has done a lot of work in the past couple of years, and she works very closely with the, you know, with the people that apply for these funds, and, you know, there's a lot of very close collaboration work. And I was actually wondering if there were any prospects for the immediate future as to how, you know, we are continuing to support these people in times of social distancing, and if we have any issues with people that would like to apply or have had issues and they, you know, they find their activities are not, that it's not possible for them to do business as usual in these times. And so I was just wondering if, you know, how it's all going for the sort of short to medium term.
Yeah, sure. So we're in regular touch anyway with the people that we've already previously funding, and because we have regular monitoring updates from all of those groups. So we're in contact with them. We're discussing it on a case-by-case basis, so they feel supported and understand that we fully understand that the project targets and proposals that were put in place 6 months ago might not be achievable in the same time frames, but actually many of them are continuing to deliver, just delivering a slightly different way or with different outcomes to meet the needs of their target users really of their projects. So we're working really hard to keep in touch with those people we've previously funded. For those who are coming up now to inquire about funding, we're trying to do our best to make sure that actually they're getting the funding they need when they need it. Hence our reason for redirecting a number of them towards the Cambridgeshire Community Foundation Coronavirus Fund, because it's different criteria. They're able to release money very, very quickly where it's needed. And so that really is an improvement to thinking about longer term projects. So where people have got ideas that do deliver things in the immediate team, it's things that we need now, then we're continuing with that. And then we will just take stock of where we are when we move on to the next phase of this, to see what other projects are coming out, but also learn from the ideas and things that have been going on to see where we can make sure that we still continue to work with those fabulous, fabulous groups who are really supporting our service areas at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks. Does that answer your question, Elisa?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
As I said, thank you so much to Leanne. It's all going beautifully well. And thank you, Elaine, for everything you're doing.
Thanks, Elisa. So, Jan, you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, really touching on what slightly what Lena and Elaine have both spoke about. I think it would be useful if we could actually have some kind of report from when we first started this, like a monitoring report, to see the successes of the innovation and culture funds that we've actually given to people. Is that something that could be worked on at some point, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I mean, we have all that information, Elaine, haven't we? And we have made it available to the committee. So I'm sure we can send a link to those past reports, can't we?
Yeah, I think that would be good, especially when people are at home and on social media, etc. It'd be something nice from that actually to sit and see successes of the county council. Thank you.
Chair, you're on mute.
Apologies, everybody. I'm busy talking to myself at the moment. So, members, the recommendations are to consider the recommendations of the panel and confirm agreement to fund the following two applications through the Cultivate funding stream. That's Cambridgeshire Early Years Teaching Alliance and Disability Huntingdonshire. If there's no dissent, we could take it as all in agreement. Please raise your hand if you have any problems with the recommendation. Nobody has. So in that case, we'll take the recommendation as approved then. Thank you very much, everybody. That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Elaine.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. So we move on to item 7, which is community champions. Councillors Costello, Every French. Who would like to go first? Any reports from?
I'm happy to go first, if that's all right.
Yeah, okay. Raise your hand if you will, champions, and then we all know. So Adela, over to you.
Okay, well, obviously, as a result of the situation we find ourselves in, a lot of the projects I've been working on, such as Essentials by Sue, are in abeyance as we need to be able to access public buildings, which obviously we can't, which is a shame, especially for young people. That was a really important project. But obviously I've changed my priorities, and I'm now working with our supporting our local communities and organisations who are helping vulnerable people shielding during this crisis. I've also been involved in 3 applications to the Community Grant Fund. One is here in Ramsey about developing Ramsey Cricket Club into a community hub. The other one, which I'm really quite excited about, is the Great Fen Project, who want to open a visitor centre, which would be really wonderful in that it would attract more people to visit the Great Fens, and would also be a source of income by selling souvenirs or, you know, cards and refreshments. The third one is a bit more difficult. It comes from an organisation called Zeus Trends, and they're wanting to develop a low traffic hood neighbourhood project in Huntingdon. The problem is that they're a charity and they don't think they can raise match funding for this project. So I'm working with Joe Lancaster at HDC to see if there could be any SIL money available, and Huntingdon Town Council. No, they have the SIL money, HDC have the 106 money. So I'm trying to look to see if there would be some money available from either of those groups that could be used in match funding. I have sent my report to Nick. I just wanted to highlight, because nobody really thinks about this a lot. I've been in contact with Hamerton Wildlife Park. I don't know if any of you know of it. They are really struggling because obviously they are really dependent on visitors and receiving income. For instance, over the Easter weekend, they would have anticipated earning £40,000, which obviously didn't happen. And they've still got the care and of the animals and feeding the animals and paying their staff, because obviously the staff need to be there to look after them. It's really hard because they're not actually a charity. They're privately owned, but there is no money out there. DEFRA has offered them £25,000, but that's a drop in the ocean, really. And I do think the government needs to consider, I've read up on like London Zoo and Whitstable and all the rest, and they're all in similar situations. So I don't know, I've been in touch with our local MP to see if he can lobby Parliament. But just as a matter of interest, I've also found out that France has put 19 million euros aside for their wildlife centres. Germany's put 100 million euros away for their wildlife centres. So, you know, this is something that possibly, you know, well, it's obviously a government thing, but perhaps if we can support Hamerton, which is a very local, small wildlife park, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Adela. And as you say, that's an issue for government really, and talking to our local MP. So I can certainly follow that up as well. Liz.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, may I say how totally frustrating it is not to be allowed out. And it has absolutely changed the way one views all sorts of different things. I'm really with Barbara on this, because it really has made a huge difference to how we rethink how we do our champion role. So I hope that's reflected in the report that I've sent through to Nick. But first of all, I'm just working from home. I spent most of my time, a lot of my time, doing networking and signposting different people to different people, because we have had huge response locally. The City Council stepped up, and they're working with a Facebook group, which is working really well with our East Cambs hubs. So we're all in touch with each other and supporting each other on that. And the growth of that has been quite remarkable to see. And that links into Wendy Lansdowne's Parish Forum meetings that she's having, because as the County Council coordinator, she's doing sterling work, Elaine. I just need to pass that on to you, to keep us all together and to share. So it's amazing what you can do when you're stuck at home. But quite a lot of my work has actually been working with small businesses who are really struggling, the self-employed and the SMEs, finding their way through the grant systems and so on. And we put together all the business organisations now, and they're all working very closely together, which has been something else which wasn't quite as overt as it is now. So that's quite, because we are pushing some of our really small businesses into poverty and the inability to actually function and to be sustainable. So that's quite an important part of this. It's not about the business as much as the people who are running the businesses and what's actually happening to them. Like Adela, I've been working on the community grant scheme, and this is great, isn't it? I've been watching what's coming through and being able to support. There's nothing I wouldn't support. I won't go into details of what they are. There's 3 I've sent through, but there's a couple more in the pipeline, and that's also mostly our parish councils, and it's good to see how our parish councils are using that. But the requests I'm getting, because I am at home, is to try to find as much as I can funding for all the small charities that don't have the time or the expertise to do this. And so I'm getting requests coming in from small charities. Could you have a look at this? Is this fun? So I'm starting to do, and I'm obviously working with the CCFL on this, but it is about the signposting of them to these kinds of funds, because there are so many funds out there. And I've been quite surprised at some organisations that have been turned down for funding that I would have expected to have got funding, and I'm looking into that as well. So quite a lot of my time is actually spending looking or breaking the barrier of fundraising, because I'm appreciative that we have lots and lots of small charities who will not be able to be sustainable after furloughing. And how does one claim money in order to pay staff to stay at home to do nothing? Really difficult. And the other thing that's coming through is that likelihood of the older generation being in lockdown longer, all of those charities that worked face-to-face, hand-to-hand, including singing groups and all sorts of things, will not be able to continue. And also, the older generation, who are very much our volunteers, is going to have an impact if they are not allowed out at the same time as others. So all of those things are testing us, I think, particularly with the small charities. And then the rest of the stuff I just keep. I suppose I ought not to say this, but potholes are not high on my priority at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Liz, but potholes are still being filled in, I understand. So.
Absolutely. Oh, yes.
Thank you, Liz. Jan? Are you there, Jan?
She's muted.
Sorry, am I back on?
Yes, you're on, Jan.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very much like the other speakers, it's a very difficult time. Lots of things now that we had hoped were going to progress are obviously on hold. But one of the things that we are working on is the community grant, which I find very exciting. And I think the whole of all councillors will do so. In Finland, I have been working quite hard. We have now 12 applications, which I'm quite sure not all of them get, but they're all very worthwhile. The officers at FDC are more than happy to help and assist with any written applications that they actually need to. But obviously, the most important thing is the expression of interest. So I'm hoping and look forward to everybody obtaining in their own division money for their communities. That's it, really.
Thank you, Jan. Right, questions for champions, if there are any. Mark?
Thank you. It was just a comment, Councillor Every, Liz, you brought up about how small, even large charities are facing a huge funding crisis. You know, just take a simple event like the London Marathon. It's for many, that's a significant fundraising thing. But I didn't know whether you were aware, and that there's a very successful campaign going on called the 2.6 Challenge. And it's a national thing that people can subscribe to. And they're actually encouraging people to get sponsorship for doing something that's either 2.6 or 26, as in to represent the numbers of miles in a marathon. And it's quite, if you just do a 2.6 challenge search on any PC, it's quite good. And if you can feed that information back, I know people who are on the 12-week lockdown who have measured their garden and are working how long they've got to walk up and down their garden to do 26 miles in a walk. So that's quite a good, and it's a good, healthy mindset as well as a physical thing to do.
That's great, Mark. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Mark. And we've all seen on the news somebody that's been walking around their garden and raised absolute millions. So, yeah, very good. Any further questions for champions? Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, all three of you. So we move on to item 8, Communities and Partnerships Committee Agenda Plan. Adrienne, there's a few changes, I believe, to the agenda plan.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Most notably, we will need to hold a meeting in May, which isn't listed on the agenda plan. I think the 20th of May is the date. Members should have it in the diary already. And specifically, this is to approve the first batch of community fund applications that the champions have just been talking about. So that assumes, of course, the member panel agrees some of the proposals rather that are coming to them prior to committee. But if that is the case, then we'll be bringing some applications forward for approval, which is very exciting. And also, of course, we'll bring a further COVID-19 update on our work. So 20th of May, I think it's a morning meeting, will need to be reinstated into our plan, please.
Thank you, Adrienne. And I think the intention at the moment is that all committees will meet monthly, including their reserve dates, so they can have the COVID report update, if nothing else. So I think members, we need to keep all those monthly dates in our diaries, just in case they're needed, because at the moment it looks as if they will be. So any questions for Adrienne? Mark?
Sorry, I hadn't taken my hand down from the last time.
Okay. I noticed that, sorry, Mark. Okay, Henry.
Thanks. So just for clarity, so we are including the provisional dates in June and August in our diaries?
Yes, we are at the moment, because the decision has been made that we should all receive a COVID update. Now, if we can just receive that electronically, because there's no decision, we may be able to do that, Henry. But at the moment, I think, Adrienne, the thoughts are that the provisional date should stay in the diary, aren't they?
That is correct, Chairman. Yes, please.
Okay, understood.
Any further questions, members? Okay. Well, that brings the meeting to a close. So thank you very much, members. Thank you very much, officers. And thank you for any that were watching at home. Stay safe, everyone. And we'll see you all again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye.
Thanks.